The character of Sansa Stark has received tons of hate online, both from her book iteration and her show iteration, and I'm here to shed some light on why I think that's incorrect. Hello everyone, this is PJ. Thanks for spending time with me. Let's hear this out. Sansa Stark of Winterfell. She's 12 when the story starts, dreaming of princes and happy endings and songs, which I think is pretty natural for someone raised in her situation. She is a highborn daughter of House Stark, the first daughter of Lord Eddard and Lady Catelyn. She is raised to be the perfect lady by her mother and her scepter. Many people say that Sansa is kind of boring, but I think that's the point. She is the baseline. She is the femininity of the show. Many characters who are female in this story, and there are plenty, only come across as powerful when they are not falling into the female parameter that they are taught to be. Arya being a warrior, the same with Brienne of Tarth, Catelyn snapping back at other lords in order to exercise her power, Daenerys having dragons, Asha Greyjoy trying to be queen of the entire Ironborn fleet. But Sansa is not like this. And as fantasy readers, we're not used to seeing damsels like that. Damsels are the people whom the story happens to, who we feel sorry for, and feel happy when they are saved. But they are basically an object in their own story. The princess in the tower, that's what Sansa is. She does genuinely love these stories. She pulled a chair close to the hearth, took down one of her favourite books, and lost herself in the stories of Florian and Jonquil, of Lady Shella and the Rainbow Knight, of valiant Prince Aemon and his doomed love for his brother's queen. This is Sansa when she is surrounded by enemies, doing her best to cope with that by losing herself in her stories, as it says. I myself do this quite a lot. She is engaging in fantasy in order to cope with reality. The thing about Sansa is that she is a fantasy character who wishes she was a fantasy character, who doesn't realise that she's living one of the stories that she has dreamed of for so long, because she hasn't realised that in order to be a fairy tale damsel, you have to go through some horrible things in order to come out the other side. But she's choosing also to stay kind, which I find very strong. Ned doesn't tell Sansa about these things, about horrible things happening around her, that she's in a dangerous place, that she shouldn't trust Joffrey or the Queen. A lady's armour is courtesy, from A Clash of Kings. This is the lesson Sansa learns. She has to pretend, she has to learn, she has to act. Once she had loved Prince Joffrey with all her heart, and admired and trusted his mother, the Queen. They had repaid that love and trust with her father's head. Sansa would never make that mistake again. She is learning, she is growing, she is aware of the horrible things around her, but teaches herself not to be. She second guesses. And I think in that way she's very much Ned's daughter. Many people say that Sansa is the most Tully of her siblings, which I can understand in many ways. But in the beginning, that naivety, that hoping that people will act honourably, she is 100% Ned's daughter in that regard. Sansa's story is about the loss of innocence, tearing down her dreams every single time she tries to hope, but she still tries her best to survive in a different way than Arya would. If Arya was in her situation, she would have died. Her defiance would have had her killed. And if Sansa was in Arya's situation, she would have died just as quickly. The two girls have very different skill sets, but they're in the stories that allow them to survive even when they are tearing them down. The gods heard my prayer, she thought. She felt so numb and dreamy. My skin has turned to porcelain, to ivory, to steel. Her evolution. Remember, she is what? 14, maybe even 13 at this point. She is a child. And another example is that she's constantly being seen as a lust object by the one person who has power over her at this point in the story, Littlefinger. She is being manipulated sexually by a man who half sees her as his daughter by her mother, the way he hoped she would have been, or as a younger version of her mother whom he was obsessed with. Sansa is basically, in his eyes, a redo of his love story with Cat. So those are your gifts from me, my sweet Sansa. Harry, the Eyrie, and Winterfell. That's worth another kiss now, don't you think? Littlefinger is manipulating and shaping her, but he sees her as a valuable piece on the board. Sansa is that piece, the key to the North, the daughter of Winterfell, but people only see that and try to use her for her power. But she doesn't know quite how to embrace that power yet. She's learning internally how to embrace that power, but she can't do it openly yet because she doesn't have allies. And the only allies she ever has are the ones that try to use her for that power. So she's very much trapped. She is a damsel. She experiences fear, anxiety, and absolute boredom because she is trapped. And as readers, we're not used to the damsel being humanized. We're not used to seeing someone who is basically us in the story. Many characters are written to be blank slates that we can project ourselves onto, but Sansa isn't that blank slate, and yet she is the most like any of us would be if we were in her story. We don't have any powers. We can't wield swords, at least most of us can't as far as I know. But she remembers their sigils and their stories. But she can't do anything about it. One thing I love, in A Storm of Swords, Sansa is starting to embrace it and letting herself mourn her childhood. She could feel the snow on her lashes, taste it on her lips. It was the taste of Winterfell, the taste of innocence, the taste of dreams. She wondered where this courage had come from, to speak to him so frankly. From Winterfell, she thought. I am stronger within the walls of Winterfell. I never asked to play. The game was too dangerous. One slip, and I am dead. Think about that. She's a child. A kid. I know I keep saying it, but she is. And she has to learn these things. She is learning within herself, and she has to be forced to play. Otherwise, she's just going to continue being a piece. Another thing about these books that revolves around Sansa is Jane Poole, otherwise known as the fake Arya of Winterfell, whom Ramsay is married to and is being tortured by, and who eventually goes to the wall to seek out Jon in order to be kept safe from Ramsay's torture. Jane was Sansa's best friend, and they often gossiped together and giggled together about Joffrey when they were children, or rather, when they were more children than they are now. When the Stark household was taken over in Winterfell when Ned was arrested, Jane was given to Littlefinger, and he found a place for her. Paraphrasing a quote there. It is implied that she was sold to a brothel and then was given to Ramsay as a bride, because as she grew up in Winterfell and has northern looks, and was around the Stark children, she would know enough about Winterfell to pose as the fake Arya. But when Sansa is taken to Winterfell, via Littlefinger's own admission of him giving it to her, Jane would have been completely and utterly broken by the people around her, and Sansa would have been one of the few people that she would still be willing to trust in the noble sphere. So I think Sansa and Jane will work together to bring down Littlefinger's entire scheme. Ned died because he tried to act as though the South had the same honour as the North. Littlefinger, I believe, will be killed because he thinks that the North will have the same scheming and backstabbing as the South. And Jane is very much like how Littlefinger was when he was younger. Used and abused and neglected and puppeted by people around him until he gained power through ways that people didn't see coming. And that mirrors Jane and Sansa. He is teaching Sansa to be a political tool. And Jane is the person who was basically his inverse. Someone who had a name but little to no power, and was thrown left and right in the Game of Thrones. But together, the two girls will be his undoing. I firmly believe this. I absolutely love that idea. And if Arya herself does want to run away and not be a lady, then they can continue pretending that Jane is Arya. Because if they need an Arya Stark, they can have two. And, by the way, I don't think Sansa has lost her abilities to walk. Lady's death was the mark of her loss of innocence, the death of her childhood. But all the Starks are powerful wargs, and I think Sansa might start to use the little birds around her the same way Bran does, the way Arya looks through the eyes of cats, and Jon sees through the eyes of ghosts. Sansa's powers are latent, much like her political power, but when she is unleashed, the Red Wolf of Winterfell, steel, porcelain, ivory, she will be a force to be reckoned with, the winter storm that hides her fellow wolf pack in order to keep them safe politically. While they are out fighting with tooth, claw, and sword, she will be fighting with words, wind, and power. Sansa Stark, the little bird, will grow into the Red Wolf of Winterfell. Thanks for spending time with me, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my other channel as well, PJ's Reads. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.